if anyone out there happens to stumble across me right now live, please just type in some questions. I'll be glad to answer serious questions or non-serious questions, or just want to type in hello. I'm trying to organize the screen, and again, I'm figuring out how to use the Studio Live and all of its different features, so that when I go on Wednesday night, I won't be stumbling as much as I did last night. And I want to thank anyone who came last night, and I would like to thank those who have been watching and viewing. Oh, well, thank you. Say hi. Thank you for joining. And with my experimenting or playing, yeah, but that's okay. If any of you have questions, God, Torah, Israel, Judaism, philosophy, theology, be glad to answer questions. Keep in mind that my regular schedule is Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. And I just discovered yesterday afternoon, or Tuesday, how to use TikTok. And so I kind of fumbled around and wasn't quite sure what I'm doing. And so I thought I'd just log on now and hope that some people would type in questions so I could see. So I have nothing prepared for right now other than saying hi to you. Say hi. Can I move this while? Yeah, I can. I can do this while we're talking. Okay, that can be done. Oh, thank all of you for joining me now. I'm moving things around on my screen. Oh, that can go over there. Excuse me. Well, we're still in the midst of the holiday of Hanukkah, and Christmas Eve is next Wednesday night. Christmas is next Thursday. It's nice to have a winter solstice holiday, a festival of lights. And keep in mind that the festival of lights predates Christmas, it predates Hanukkah. It makes sense. At the dark of the sun and the dark of the moon, we want to have light. And so it would seem to make sense that a festival of lights of some kind would predate either Christmas or Hanukkah, and it does. No, I'm not a Holocaust survivor. I'm second-generation American. My grandparents, for whatever reason, left Russia during the Russian Revolution, 1917, 1918, I believe. Not quite sure of the date. And not all the... And anyone that didn't migrate to the United States was killed in the Holocaust, was murdered. Why my particular grandparents decided to leave Belarusia, Globoki in Belarusia, why they decided to leave during the Russian Revolution never talked about it, or I was too young to understand why, or they made up stories. However, if they hadn't, obviously I wouldn't be here. And through the years, I remember meeting some cousins, but we never became really close to some of those people. And my memories are very hazy about that. But I do know we have almost no relatives other than those born after coming here to the United States. And I'm frequently asked about my last name, Block. Our family name was Blech, Blech. And fortunately, when the Blocks arrived on, or the Blechs arrived on Ellis Island, the whoever was there giving names and checking said, Blech, it's not going to work here. I'm changing it to Block. Now, there is Block Island. There's a legitimate Dutch family. So Block is a legitimate last name. It's just not mine. Mine had been changed. And that happened to a lot of Jews, Russians, Czechs, Slavic people, Polish, people whose names contained a lot of vowels. And combinations of consonants that were very difficult to pronounce. And fortunately, I have no problems with having my name changed. Fortunately, the immigration people realized that it's hard enough being an immigrant, but when your name can't be pronounced, that makes it that much more difficult. And so that's how I came about my name. There's a funny story that's told about the Fergusons. On the ships coming to the United States, the Jewish agency would practice with the immigrants. They would set up a table, and someone would be an immigrant officer, and they would ask them the questions. Where are you from, education, and they do health inspections. And they would go through this whole procedure so that when people arrived at Ellis Island, it would expedite going through the immigration process. However, as you can imagine, coming from a small village, a farming village somewhere in Russia or Poland or Czechoslovakia or Lithuania or Latvia or Ukraine, wherever you were coming from, you got really, really nervous. And so a lot of times the immigrant would be there in front of the official and they'd say, what is your name? And they would go, Ich vergessen, ich vergessen. Ich vergessen is Yiddish for I forgot. They just panicked. And listening to that, Ich vergessen, oh, Ferguson, you're another Ferguson. And so some research has been done. So a lot of Fergusons are actually descendants of Jewish immigrants. So if you know anyone named Ferguson, ask them if they know the history of their name, if they truly are a Ferguson, or they're a member of the Ich Vergessen Club. Vergessen, I forgot. And that makes me wonder how many other last names, how many other people who came to the United States had their names changed. I went to school with a Pone, and his family had been Ponetsky. And we find various spellings of the ski at the end of a word. Given that just would raise a question. I see that Forsaken joined. You sure you're not a Ferguson? Vergessen? Is your name Forsaken? Or did you change it? I've always kept through social media Rabbi Block because I have a podcast, The Rabbi and I, The Wisdom of Rabbi Block. I have the YouTube channel, The Wisdom of Rabbi Block. Here on TikTok is Rabbi Block. All my social media, I want people to know who I am. and I want my name out there. I was on the Harford County School Board for 8 years, 2 4-year terms. I was going to say 10 years, 2 5-year terms, but I'm 80 and I'm starting to get a little mixed up with some things. I think it's a 4-year term, and everything was my name, Rabbi Kenneth B. Block. I put the rabbi in, that's my title. I didn't use chaplain, even though I spent 40 years of my life as a chaplain in a VA hospital, psychiatric hospital. Somebody asked if I speak Yiddish. Unfortunately, my grandparents, whom lived with us, they would speak Yiddish to each other when they didn't want us to understand. So they intentionally didn't teach Yiddish because then we'd know what they were talking about. And the other thing was they wanted us to be American. They wanted us to learn English and to speak English like all the other Americans. And so often I would hear words, particularly vulgarities or swear words or some other words I could pick up. So depending, I can understand some, but not enough to have a conversation. And I say it's unfortunate because I wish they had taught us Yiddish. I would like to know it or be able to speak it. But I understand their reasoning. They wanted us to be Americans without accents. And so they spoke Yiddish to keep things from us. In the house I grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts, my mother and father, my sister, my aunt who never married, my mother's mother and father, we all lived together. And then, of course, as to be expected, one by one, everyone died. My mother died when I was young, and fortunately, my sister, of blessed memory, took care of me. And so I have fond memories of my sister. And, my sister was my dictionary. My sister was the person I used to go to ask. I'd say, Carolyn, did this really happen? Or do you remember this happening? And she was able to help me and would compare memories. But my sister was my memory. And of course, she is no longer here. Remember, death ends a life, but not a relationship. Here I am talking about my sister. I still have a relationship with her. She's not here physically, but death does not end relationships. It just ends physical. Remember, we're physical beings. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and that physical experience ends. And the spiritual experience, well, the spirit goes back to God who gave it. And so the memories and the relationships live on, way beyond what may be at this moment, at this time. And most of you are younger. I was just younger than I am, but that's not hard. Most of them are my grandchildren's age or younger. That's just the nature of TikTok. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining me in this impromptu moving things on my screen, doing TikTok Studio Live. I just accidentally checked because for a long time I could use TikTok to view things, but I couldn't go live or record. And I kept checking. So I don't know how long TikTok Live Studio has been available for Mac. I know it was available for PC for a while. And I was hoping it would come around because I have an iMac and it's a very big screen. And that makes it really easy for me to read what you're saying and for me to look at myself and look at the screen. It's also, it's very helpful. So then when I realized last night, things were in the wrong place, and when I recorded it, I couldn't post the video because I was the size of a postage stamp. Today I realized I can expand it so I have myself on a full window, and then I realized that the the comments and the people joining are in a window I can move around. So I figured, I'll just come on and maybe some people will see, or maybe someone will have some questions about Hanukkah, what it's like to be a chaplain in a psychiatric hospital. So I thought, okay, why don't I come on for a little while, and whoever stays listening listens. And for those of you who are, I want to thank you. What do you think is the biggest difference of young people of your generation and young people now? The speed of things, the availability of things. And I often think, it's really scary growing up. I think it's much scarier growing up now than when I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I can remember when someone went to Florida and brought back oranges in the winter. It was a treat. You couldn't get them. Now, if you go into Costco, they have every fruit and vegetable there. And if you go into any of our Asian markets, there are fruits, vegetables, and fish. I have no idea what they are. And some of our Asian markets don't put signs in English. They're in Korean or Chinese. The availability of everything, there was a sense of awe, and also the speed of which things change. You need a seatbelt in order to hold on. Things change so fast. I mean, I have an Apple Watch, and you may not know Dick Tracy, but Dick Tracy was a comic character when I grew up, and he had a watch. Now his had video on it. That will come. And I was so thrilled with my first Apple Watch because I actually owned a watch that Dick Tracy owned. Unbelievable. But it's the speed of which things are happening, the availability of information. TikTok, I think, has 1.5 billion worldwide on this platform. The ability to teach, to learn. And the negative side is the amount of hate, the amount of anger I see. When I grew up, if somebody in Des Moines was angry, I didn't know. If somebody in France was upset about something, wouldn't know. But now we know instantly everybody's everything. And it requires some self-discipline. And it's very difficult. But it's also a plus because it then gives people a forum to express anger and resentment. What I have trouble with is just the anger and resentment and not wanting to take a look and saying, why am I so angry? What am I annoyed about? How can I handle my feelings before I act in a harmful way? And that was my topic last night. That which we plant will be harvesting. And we've been promoting hate, and people have been hating other people. It doesn't matter. If your hair's short, it should be long. If your hair's long, it should be short. If your skin's light, it should be dark. If your skin's dark, it should be light. If whatever your orientation is towards other people, it's wrong. Everything's, and I think that's the downside of all this fast worldwide information. And I think that makes it very difficult for those of us, for those of you, all of us, receiving end. Things were slower. We were outside all the time. I would head off to school, often go from school to religious school, then come home when it got dark, go to the playground, out all the time. And television used to go off at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, one of the 3 stations. And you asked me about the differences. Overwhelmed with technology, overwhelmed with everything. We need some strategies for ourselves, for our own sanity, to keep our balance. Not everything's worth watching. Not everything's worth listening to. Not everything's worth responding to. And I think that kind of self-discipline, that's a major difference, is speed and everybody, everything. And other is the pressure of advertising. Don't always need the newest iPhone, the newest computer, the newest anything. Does what you have work for you? Is it doing your job? I think workability is a very important concept. And I'd like to go aside a little and introduce this idea of workability. Does it work for you? And it's a way to deal with anger, resentment. It's a way to deal with buying things. What is the outcome? I agree with tech, do something, but not if we should. I taught for many years. I was a adjunct associate professor of medicine, University of Maryland School of Medicine. I taught in the Department of Psychiatry, psychiatric residence, medical ethics, and my co-teacher was a psychiatrist. Mark and I, we were a team for 20, 30 years. And one of the things we taught was just because you can doesn't mean you should do it. And we're talking in medicine. We're talking about tests. We're talking about treatment. And I think, Lucky L, you're spot on. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. And we applied it in our ethics class to very tough medical decisions. If it's not going to give us results that are helpful, if it's not going to help the patient, if it's not going to lead to a positive outcome, not even a neutral outcome, no, there's no reason to sign off. There's no reason to send somebody for testing if it's not going to. And I think, Lucky L, you want to hold on to that and teach it to your friends. Remember, just because we can doesn't mean we should. We have to see workability. Will a new phone, will it have features that I need? Do I want a phone the size of a toaster, which I don't think they're around anymore? How big a phone do I need? And just because it's bigger, do I need it? So thank you, Lucky L69. You're spot on. And advertising, Lucky L69, fascinating. The goal of advertising is to convince us that there's something wrong with us that only their product can create. Think about it. What's wrong with me? Oh, my beard is too, whatever. I need their product to solve my beard problem. Nothing wrong with my beard. I can thin it. I can treat it. During the winter, I sometimes grow it longer just for fun, because I can. Your eyes are the wrong color. Your hair's curly, it should be straight. Your hair's straight, it should be curly. And that's the danger in advertising, is they bombard us with what's wrong with us that only their product can fix for us. And the reality is there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with us. You know, human beings are a continuum. We come in a lot of different sizes, a lot of different shapes. We have likes and dislikes. We're human beings. And to start labeling these things as wrong and a product to correct it. Teeth are not white. Yet we're led to believe we have to whiten our teeth, and our teeth should be white. It's not natural color. So thank you for pointing that out, Lucky L69, because we want to be careful, because advertising is to make money, to sell a product, and the goal is there's something wrong with us that only they can fix or create. If I use that cologne, my whole life will change. If I get that car, look how wonderful it'll be. And in reality, that isn't true. It isn't true. It's about us. It's nice to have a nice car. It's nice to smell. I'm not saying we shouldn't smell good. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a nice car. I'm not against anything. I want to bring us back, Lucky L69, to workability. How does that work for me? Will it help me? You know, some days you're the windshield, some days you're the bug, some days you're the statue, some days you're the pigeon. Some days are good, some days are mediocre, some days circle the drain. And so, given what's reasonable, we have to learn to live with having good days and bad days, feeling okay. Live with my sister not around. I can't call her. Like I said, I still have a relationship, but not physically. And things break. Okay, my phone broke. I'll get another one. And I'll look at the features and say, oh, this model has, and in the past, what I've done is when I've purchased a new something, it was after the newest one came out. I'm doing this on an iMac, but not the new Mac chip. This is still on the old, whatever the other chip was. This was the last iMac. And then they introduced, the Apple introduced its own silicon chip, I believe, which meant this was discounted quite heavily, and it filled my needs. And I was looking at some newer ones. They are faster. The screen is a little better resolution. And I said to myself, not yet. I don't need that yet. It's nice. I don't need it for what I do. And so I'm waiting. And that's what I would like to introduce all of us to, this idea of workability. Well, I want to thank you for this random live to help me move things around my screen and see what things look like. And of course, advertising. I'd be remiss if I didn't promote my book, How to Be Jewish in 30 Seconds. And how could you possibly resist? A great stocking stuffer, perfect for next to the menorah. We still have a night or two left, but great as a stocking stuffer. And you don't have to be Jewish to appreciate the cartoons that Joe did, or the view of how not to get trapped in religious ritual, but to enjoy the spirituality of religion and to be able to connect with the one through spirituality. That was the purpose of my book. And being a rabbi, I did How to Be Jewish in 30 Seconds. Maybe the next one I'll do is How to Be Roman Catholic in 30 seconds. And even the Roman Catholic Church has the sin of scrupulosity. Not easy to say. That means you pay so much attention to the details of a ritual that you're not spiritual, that you're not living Jesus. All you're doing is building a model and making sure you get everything right. And the church even called it the sin of scrupulosity. So, please, thank you very much for joining me for this impromptu. And I'm learning what's on my screen. And please, I will be on Christmas Eve next Wednesday at 8. And what I had trouble with last Wednesday was finding the button as to how to end the live. But see, I'm pointing at it. I know where